Hello, Get Better Faster Nation. I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host, the one, the only James Chester, and our incredible executive producer, Rachel Bradley, we want to welcome you to another exciting episode of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by someone who's lived two very different versions of the American dream. For over 2 decades, Steve Frazier built a successful restaurant empire, 6 restaurants, countless cups of coffee, and the relentless grind that comes with high-stakes entrepreneurship. But after 23 years of running on caffeine and adrenaline, Steve discovered something most of us never question, that our daily coffee habit might be the very thing holding us back from true vitality, mental clarity, and sustainable energy. Steve is the founder of Release the Coffee Cuffs, a groundbreaking coaching program helping people break free from caffeine dependence without losing their edge. He's an MBA, a wellness advocate, and the author of Release the Coffee Cuffs, Winning the Battle with Caffeine, a science-backed, deeply personal guide that's helped thousands reclaim their focus, sleep, and emotional balance. If you've ever wondered whether your coffee habit is serving you or sabotaging you, this conversation is going to open your eyes. Without further ado, Steve, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jason. It is a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this for months.
Yeah, it's honestly, I know that we're gonna kick up some dust on some really great conversation today, and a lot of people are gonna be like, "What are these guys? What do they mean? Why are they talking about like I don't want a cup of coffee anymore?" But you were seriously running for 2 decades, 6 restaurants, and you realized that you had to take people away from the idea that they thought that caffeine was their productivity tool. When did you realize that you had something that you could help people get better faster with and make this make sense to them?
It actually started 13 years ago. My wife got chronically ill and was almost dead. We saw 17 doctors over 2 years. 17 doctors told her to leave the room. Never tried to help her, told her it was in her head, told her to go on narcotics. Our daughter walked in. She had just started a natural health practice. So 11 years ago, this happened. She walked into the house and said, "I'm going to test you. It's energy work, muscle testing. I'm sure you're familiar with that." And 15 minutes in the kitchen, and she said, "You have Lyme disease from the waist down." And that was confirmed 4 days later by her mentor. And so that started into a natural health rabbit hole, which is, if you're going to go in a rabbit hole, that's not a bad one to go into, because what happens is it was either she goes in it or dies. And so, we learned about a lot of things. She became celiac, grain intolerant, no nitrates, no processed food. So I make all the meals from scratch. So 11 years ago, then I had a health scare and I thought I was having a heart attack. Went to the ER, got hooked up to an EKG machine, and we're watching the EKG machine just go up and down, just huge peaks. The doctor comes in and he said, "Oh, you're okay. You're not going to die." I said, "Well, thank you." Because my heart is jumping out of my chest. And he said, "Those are called premature ventricular contractions, PVCs." And he said, "You happen to be very sensitive to them. And so everybody has them, but you're sensitive. So you thought you're having a heart attack." I said, "So what causes this?" He said, "Well, stress." And then he paused and he smirked a little bit and he said, "And caffeine." And I had been on the road that morning. I was traveling to Milwaukee, which is a 3-hour drive. I was going to work for 6 hours, drive 3 hours back. I'm already loading up on coffee. I'm going to drink, Red Bulls all day because I got to drive. I'm gone for 12, 14 hours. So I quit. And like every good addict, which is what I was, I thought, I have this under control and I can do this. So a couple of years later, I started back, and there's no control there. Once it grips you, it grips you. And so 2 years ago, I finally quit cold turkey because my sleep was poor. I realized that I was a slave to coffee and to caffeinated sodas. And I love energy drinks. Okay. Who doesn't love getting hit with dopamine, cortisol, and adrenaline all at the same time? Okay. Raise your hand. No, but everybody likes this. Okay. The question is, what's it doing to me? So after I'm going to tell you this now, and I'll tell you again, if you're going to ever quit caffeine, just don't do it cold turkey, because it is brutal. It is painful. I was down for 3 days. headache, brain fog, fatigue. The headaches are brutal, and we'll get into why you get the headaches, because nobody really knows why you get a headache when you quit caffeine. And so at about that time, then I was certified as a self-sabotage coach. And, you know, you guys are familiar with Jason Christoff. That's who I trained with. I have a lot of respect for him. And so taking that natural health background that I had, and along with the self-sabotage, there's a pillar in the physical pillar in self-sabotage has all the usual suspects: caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, drugs, prescription drugs, overeating, lack of sleep, everything, all these things. And I looked at the caffeine and I thought, you know, I've had some unique experience with caffeine, so let's look into this. And then as I wrote the book, I realized that I had so many aha moments that it was kind of scary. And it was fun because you go back to Socrates, and he said something very prophetic, philosophical. You don't know what you don't know. Okay. As I'm writing the book, I am just being bombarded with things I didn't know. And so as you go forward into that, and you say, in the United States alone, approximately 85% of everyone drinks caffeine. Now that's 200 to 300 million people just in the United States. Now you take that worldwide, that's about 6 billion. And it's $1 trillion a year business. And I'm going to make some kind of statements here, bold statements maybe. I'm not anti-caffeine, and neither is my book. I'm pro-health. I'm pro-knowledge. I have a message. The message is, do you know someone that may be negatively affected health-wise with caffeine? And if you do, then please share some of this with them. And I did a podcast last month, and I was talking about this very thing. And I said to the host, you know, I feel like a salmon swimming upstream. And everybody's seen this picture, you know, that battle, just a battle to go up and spawn. And he chuckled and he said, no, Steve, you're the salmon swimming against a tsunami.
Oh, wow.
And he's absolutely right. Because the cognitive dissonance that I battle, which we all know in the last 5 years has become incredibly more aware. People are more aware of it. But I have friends and family I've handed the book to, and the first thing they say to me is, you're not taking my coffee from me. I just chuckle. I say, I have no intention of taking anything from you, much less your coffee. And I said, just so you know, I can't, because you have free will and free won't. And I don't control what goes in your body. However, I can possibly influence how you look at your relationship with caffeine.
That's an amazing story, man. I relate to that so much. And I've cut caffeine out a lot. And by the way, I just want to give props to Jason Christoff. We had him on the show recently, and he's a phenomenal individual.
He is.
And I could go on and on about that, but I'm so glad to be with you in that self-sabotage coaching program. That said, when I was caffeine built up in my life. I just want to say that. When I was going through my first doctorate program, I had an embryology class at 7:30 a.m. And right outside the door for embryology with Dr. Bahati. I love Dr. Bahati. There was a Starbucks kiosk, just a little coffee cart, and they sold coffee. Well, when I would leave home in the morning, I would drink coffee before I left. I'd wake up early. I don't know what time, 5 o'clock, 5:30, prepping for the day. I would drink coffee at home. I would fill my thermos up, and before 7:30, and I don't mean a little thermos. I mean, like, I don't know how big it is, but a pretty big thermos. I'd fill that up with coffee again. By the time I'd get to 7:30 embryology, I would fill it up with the Starbucks, liquid crack, and I would go in and I would drink that. And by 10:30, 11 o'clock, I was filling it up again, and I was filling it up again in the afternoon. And I don't know how many of these thermoses, I don't know how many liters of coffee I was drinking, but it was a lot of coffee. I make the joke that I think half of my funds went to Starbucks over this time period. And it was very convenient. It was there. And, I had, I think my last bit of the day, I had probably cadaver lab. I couldn't fit everything in the daytime. So I had like cadaver lab at like 10 o'clock at night. And,
Wow.
I'm just drinking coffee, finally getting home at whatever time, trying to power sleep. And I couldn't get to sleep because I had caffeine rushing through my body, wake up at 5 a.m., 5:30 the next day and do it again and again and again and again, 5 days a week. It was a rough life. You'd think when I got out of school and had more control over my schedule, that would have changed. But when I got into practice, right across the street from me was this, natural foods co-op, New Pioneer Co-op, one of the largest co-ops in the country. And they had some really good espresso. And my assistant knew what my drink was. And I'm not exaggerating. It was 10 shots of espresso, 10 shots. And sometimes they'd be like double shots or add some other things in there. And I always said, with more cream than you think that I need. And that's what I was drinking. I was living on that. At least in the morning, if not a couple times a day. And they called it the Bradley Special. And I was literally living on this stuff. I would make jokes about just hook me up to an IV and get caffeine into me. The thing is, my body crashed. And by the time I'd have to do the math, but let's just say I was in my early 30s. I finished a couple doctorate programs and had been practicing for a little bit. I had the same experience. I flew down to San Antonio for a cardiology conference. I am not a cardiologist, but I like to attend a lot of different conferences so I can hear what's going on in all the different fields. And I had plane delays, nothing like what's going on right now with all the craziness at the airports. But I had a plane delay, and I didn't end up getting into the city until like 3 a.m. or something. So whatever it was really late. The conference started at like 7. Again, check-in registration. And by the time I got there to the conference, I did not feel well. I just wasn't feeling well. And I turned to the cardiologist next to me at lunchtime and I made a joke and I said, brother, I don't feel well. I'm going to check in next door to the Nick's walk-in urgent care clinic and see what's going on. And he looked at me very gravely and he said, man, I'm glad you're going because I was worried about you. Like you look like shit. And I ended up going, I got triaged. I was having severe heart palps. My blood pressure was through the roof. My heart rate was through the roof, and they never determined what it was. And lo and behold, I'm sure now in retrospect, it was caffeine. I was so dosed up on a combination of caffeine, and poor sleep habits, and my body crashed. It just crashed. I did go cold turkey, and I want to talk to you about that to turn this into a question. Thanks for listening to my story. I just relate to it. I relate to the PBCs. I mean, I relate to all of it.
Right.
I went off coffee. I should just tell you, I went off coffee cold turkey. I don't even enjoy the smell of it anymore. Like it's repulsive to me. My body rejects it. It's very interesting. But it's also, you mentioned, in your story, it's probably not a good idea to go off of caffeine cold turkey, especially if you were addicted like I was. Tell me about what happens when people go off coffee cold turkey or caffeine cold turkey, and what are some options for people?
Well, the first thing is adenosine, and we talk. There's a circadian rhythm that we all have, natural. Your cortisol, which is stress hormone, naturally is produced in the morning. And you look at the sun or you look at a sun lamp. That's the best way to. It's an energy booster. It gets you going. And it's supposed to. Now, what caffeine does is it doubles it. Every time you drink caffeine, you get cortisol. Okay. And we can get into that later, what happens. There's a cortisol belly. There's all kinds of stuff, bad things, cortisol and testosterone. But what also happens then is you get adrenaline and you get and dopamine. Okay. And dopamine is a wonderful drug. Okay. It's a wonderful hormone because it's your natural high. And who doesn't like that natural high? It's wonderful. Okay. And, many people get it many different ways. A fun fact to know and tell is that 90% of dopamine is released in anticipation of the act. Okay. So when you're walking into Starbucks, you're getting a buzz. Okay. I start out one of my presentations with the Folgers in your cup commercial. Okay. I can give 95% of the people in the audience a dopamine rush just by talking about the Folgers in your cup, because you can smell it. Okay. And so, but the big one, and nobody talks about adenosine. Okay. Because as your cortisol goes down, your melatonin and your adenosine goes up. so you go to sleep naturally at night. That's your circadian rhythm. And adenosine is what actually really puts you to sleep at night. And the caffeine molecule is very similar to the adenosine molecule. In fact, it's so similar that when you drink caffeine, the caffeine molecule will go into the adenosine receptor in your brain. Okay. So you're not mentally tired. And as long as you keep drinking caffeine, you are not going to be mentally tired. Now, if you do this all day, your body says enough. And at some point, you're going to go to sleep. People that drink caffeine sleep. So don't misunderstand me. When I talk about these things, there's always exceptions because everybody processes differently. However, we also don't control how our body reacts to caffeine, because that's a natural thing. That's ingrained in us through God. And so when you drink caffeine, it goes into your brain and it goes into the adenosine receptors and it plugs them. Now, you do this, like you said, pots and pots a day for years and years and years, and then you stop. And guess what happens? The adenosine receptors open up. Now, over time, your brain actually produces more adenosine receptors because your brain is saying, I need more adenosine receptors because my body's tired. I need to go to sleep. So you produce more adenosine receptors. Now they're getting plugged. So when you quit, you get this massive blood flow to your brain because your adenosine receptors are opening up. And there is only one way to stop that, and that is caffeine. You can, best thing to do is drink as much water as you can to make it go as fast as you can. But you can take pain relievers, you can take Vicodin, you can take whatever you want. It's just not, because it's not going to plug the adenosine receptors. It's not going to stop the blood flow. And so you can't, like when I quit 2 years ago, I had 3 days. If you're going to cold turkey, you got to budget a minimum of 3 days, possibly 9 to 10 days where you're crap. Yes.
I just wanted to take a quick pause. You're like, take painkillers, take Vicodin. Like, wouldn't you rather drink coffee?
It's a good observation. I was saying that for all the people that don't want to drink the coffee to get rid of the headache. Okay.
Gotcha.
Pain relievers and narcotics are not going to stop it. Okay. That was the point.
Yeah.
I'm not promoting drug use here. Okay.
No. I was just like, you're going to trade one for the other. I'm like,
right,
you might want to just stay on the coffee.
Well, I called up my daughter, who's a natural health practitioner, and she's got a supplement for everything. She's my primary caregiver. She saved my wife's life. Okay. I kind of trust her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know that, Jason, you have clients, you have perhaps saved a life or two. We're going to talk about this later, where you're going to help me save a whole bunch of lives, but that's for another segment in not 20 minutes. But I understand what your question is, James. And
yeah, I just get real reality for nuts and bolts to people that are just like, what is he actually saying here? Because that was my like red flag moment during that.
What I'm saying is that you can't stop that headache unless you drink more caffeine. So,
gotcha.
The key is not to cold turkey. The key is to taper.
Gotcha.
Okay. And in my program, in my book, I emphasize that it can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months.
I have some curveball questions.
Sure.
They weren't like drafted up. I was just thinking about what you and Dr. Jason were talking about. And I'm that bougie coffee drinker when I used to. Like, I only get like the best beans in the world. I only, grind them myself. And I was just very like on my own path with the way that I would drink coffee and the way that, like Jason was talking about, the Bradley special.
Yep.
Like I would do a French press where I would have it prepared a certain way. I would make sure the temperature was the right way. I'd steep it the right time and all that stuff. And honestly, I would know the difference between like if I was drinking my own or if I was like on a road trip across like a long drive and I'd go get like the rock gut stuff from like a gas station.
Sure.
But also then, you think about all the additives and it becomes this cocktail. Like even like the little half and halves that are in like the little plastic containers, that's some toxic shit. And and then you think about the ones that they like have there that you pump, like that's even worse than that. And the stuff that they're doing at the drive-through coffee spots, whether it be a Dutch Brothers or a Starbucks, the stuff that they put in is worse than that. So when we think about creating this like cocktail of not just the coffee itself, it becomes something greater than the coffee, and it becomes the sugar addiction, it becomes the empty
Mm.
calorie addiction, and it becomes like you're talking about this roadway to symptomatology that creeps up on you after years and years of abuse that you don't know what the heck it is. Before you know it, you're like, I think I have a heart condition. And you're like, no, 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 no. You really have a caffeine addiction.
Right.
And that's really interesting that you could start to put those together. But I guess I just want to get clear because I quit coffee after we interviewed Jason Christoph,
Yep.
back in June. I haven't touched a cup of coffee, haven't taken a sip of coffee since
Good for you.
June. Yeah, but I went cold turkey. Like
Mhm.
I just said, I'm done. I mean, I'm the guy that can drink a pot of coffee and take a nap.
Yep.
So I think my receptors are different than the normal human. Like it just didn't knock me down and it didn't give me the buzz. I just liked it for the habit.
Right.
Mm.
So,
but there's one more question.
okay.
What's the difference between the caffeine in coffee and the caffeine in tea? Is there any difference in the delivery method on that?
No, it's a molecule. Okay.
Now it's getting dangerous.
So,
Hold on. It's getting dangerous because
Yeah.
I've got a matcha.
yeah.
It's just a matcha, and
Yep.
I've got also a black tea.
Yep.
So I mean,
And
I
so
ditched the coffee bit. I want to hear this answer.
if it, you can use your cognitive dissonance voice, okay, in the back of your subconscious and say, oh yes, I'm going to drink tea and that caffeine is good for me. Green tea is good for me. Okay. Well, if you drink 300 milligrams of green tea, it's just like drinking 300 milligrams of, well, coffee. If per se, green tea has a little less milligram or a little less caffeine in it, but it's the molecule. It's just the delivery system you're talking about. It just, and we're not going to get into the delivery systems, but that's it. It's a delivery system of the caffeine.
Well, based on that, which I appreciate you giving some clarity to that because I do want to just establish this moment. I really believe that people that switch to tea, they don't drink 10 cups of tea the same way they drink 10 cups of coffee. And
Agreed.
they're not adding the same crap additives into their
Yep.
tea. They might put some honey or some sugar, some brown sugar, natural sugar into it. So I think the concoction is a bit more clear and easier on the system. Just my
Yep.
opinion, because I
Sure.
don't know the science behind it, and I'm just
Right.
like the armchair quarterback over here making ideas.
That's
But
okay.
if you had to give like a better stimulant for people if they're looking for something, because I was like, hey, don't tell them take Vicodin or painkillers.
No.
What
Right.
would you say to somebody to fill that space
Well,
for themselves?
adaptogens, like ashwagandha, things like that, rooibos tea. Okay. And then,
Rooibos tea.
yeah,
So you can still drink tea.
that's caffeine free. That doesn't have any caffeine in it.
Okay.
Okay. It's naturally not caffeinated. And I mean, if you want to, if you want me to get the book out, I can read you the list. Okay. I mean, I didn't memorize the list. I mean, what it is, I'll tell you what, and that's
Maybe we can put in the show notes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I have all these things in the show notes, and I've got caffeine content. But one of the things that I'm going to hit you with, and don't fall off your chair, throw stuff at me, even though it might not hurt me, is that you're going to find generally, okay, you may not be the case. And I'm going to go back to your story quickly, is that everybody processes caffeine differently. And if you are a fast processor, you might not, you didn't have those side effects that a slow processor has.
No.
Okay. And so again, we're all unique. We all process differently. But at the end of the day, if you want that stimulant, what you just asked me, what can I do? I'll tell you what to do. Stop drinking caffeine, and in 6 months, you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to feel like you have a triple shot of espresso, because you're going to have so much natural energy. And I don't have to make this up. Okay, these are all science-based studies. I have the first chapter of my book is anecdotal stories, and it's very interesting because I originally intended to put it as the last chapter as a entertainment value. You read about people. It's about people that quit caffeine. It's got about 20 stories.
Cool.
And as I put it together, I realized that this could have perhaps the most impact of anybody, because when you read it, you are going to find yourself in there. Okay, you're reading about yourself. And of the 19 of the 20 stories, undoubtedly, everyone said the biggest impact they had was sleep. Now, if you're not aware, you should be. I think you are. Sleep is the foundation of health. Okay. Where do we heal? We heal in our sleep. Where do we produce testosterone? In our sleep. Where do we produce estrogen? All that. Okay. And then and caffeine disrupts the sleep cycle. And if you want to talk about that later, I know all about it. Okay. There's 4 stages. They repeat 4 to 6 times a night. There's a gentleman on YouTube. His name is Vince Del Monte. And if you go on YouTube and you Google, I quit caffeine, he's going to come up number 1. He's got 11-minute testimonial. He was doing the Jason Bradley protocol. Okay. He was drinking espresso to go to church. He was drinking espresso to go to a meeting. He couldn't function while at espresso. It was destroying his personal life. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to pass it back to Jason too. Jason, you're the doctor on the show. How frequently do we get like our gut like becomes new and our skin cells become new? Like I know that over time everything like regenerates. Do you have that stuff in your head?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can give us a pretty good guesstimate here. I mean, the gut is interesting. It turns over about every 2 weeks. So I mean, it's the gut is, and skin cells, I mean, they're always turning over. I mean, we're shedding our skin cells all of the time. So our body does regenerate. I mean, we used to say crazy things like, oh, you're only born with so many brain cells, and if you kill them off, that's all it is. But I mean, we know there's neuro regeneration and neuroplasticity, and things are always changing all the time now. So I would say, kind of on the short end, we have skin and gut cells, those epithelial cells. But then we also have on kind of the longer end, our liver, which of course is going to be affected by whatever we're putting in our body, and that's probably about upwards of 7 years, so to speak. I mean, it's a much longer time to see that regeneration, but our bodies inherently know how to regenerate and how to heal. Yeah, good question.
So, but Steve also said in about 6 months, you're going to wake up with massive amounts of energy. How does that correlate from the regeneration of our skin cells and our liver cells and our gut cells? How does that start to tie in?
Is that to me or is that to Steve?
Both you guys can tackle this one.
Steve, you want it or do you want me to take it?
Well, I'll throw my 2 bits in. How's that?
Let's do it.
First of all, you're kind of pinning me down to 6 months, okay? And that, again, everybody's different. So for one guy could be 2 weeks. For one guy could be. I watch Facebook groups that there's people that are still struggling after 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
Okay, because of different processing, different damage they may have done to their bodies. There's a very popular DC on YouTube who drank 2 pots of coffee all the way through school, and now he won't quit caffeine because he thinks he'll do too much damage to his body, so he still drinks 2 cups a day. I don't believe that. Okay, I believe that he can quit and his body will do just what you said, Dr. Jason. It will regenerate and he's going to be okay. But he's an influencer. Okay, so what he's telling you is if you used to drink 2 pots of coffee a day, it's okay to just drink 2 cups. Okay, that makes me mad. That irritates me. Okay, so anyway, go ahead.
Well, I'm just stirring the pot a little bit.
And you're doing a fine job. You are
I like stirring the pot.
You're a master.
I like stirring the pot. I would say that, this is a cop out. This is a cop out to just put some spin on what Steve just said. It's multifactorial. And what I mean by that is, and I think Steve said this too, is that there's going to be a lot of different factors. There could be genetic factors. I mean, Steve mentioned earlier that there could be someone that's a slow processor, a quick processor, and there's different genes that can code for that. Certainly, I think, liver health and detoxification pathways will also play a role in how quickly we get various metabolites and chemicals out of our system. I think that, methylation, another big word there, can play a role there as well. So I think that, ultimately around, if we're going to, I'm going to agree with Steve that we can't pin it down to like it's 6 months. I've seen, with our program, when we're working with our new clients, we give them I think it's a 14-day water challenge, water only challenge. And what I mean by that is people misinterpret that it's 14 days of fasting only with water. And the only person I know that can do that is James Chester, who just, I think, completed an 11-day water and electrolyte fast. But what I mean by that is, we have people give up all other drinks, and they just focus on water intake and electrolytes. And we ask them how they're doing. And they're eating, real whole food as well. And we're, redesigning a few things. And within that 2 weeks, people don't want to go back. I mean, I want to go down that slippery slope that Steve said. I'm an addict. I've got it under control. I've done that 2-week challenge. I feel great when I do that 2-week challenge. I feel fantastic when I do a 72-hour water fast, with electrolytes. I feel wonderful. My body feels reset. But then over time, I like my matcha lattes, with a little stevia in there. And, I'm doing all the mental gymnastics that everyone else is doing, saying things like, well, it's got some B vitamins in there, so it's offsetting the, total dehydration from the caffeine. And it's not as much caffeine as the coffee. And I mean, I hear the litany in my head that I'm going through, and it's all the stuff that Steve said. And I'm questioning now my love. I love tea. I'm British by background. You'd never guess looking at me that I'm Northern European and British. I mean, that was a joke for everybody. But I'm like the whitest person you're ever going to meet. I'm like 86% Scottish and UK, and the other 14% like German or something like that. But at any rate, so all I know is drinking and fighting. But at any rate, ultimately, I love tea. I feel like it's in my genetics. I love tea. And it's been my crutch to stay off of coffee, but I'm rethinking through this all right now. So maybe I need to put myself on my 14-day water and electrolyte only challenge. I mean, it sounds like I do.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing though. This is what's happening through our show, Jason, is the same thing it's doing to our listeners. Because of the osmosis of conversations that we have, where it's helping us getting better faster. Like I quit coffee in June because of Christoph's interview. I'm probably going to quit black tea today because of Steve Frazier's interview. And I'll probably go and find one of these alternative tea methods that he says is okay. And I'll probably start putting natural honey in it and just having like an elixir rather than a caffeine concoction.
And I want to comment and throw it over to Steve. It sounds like the longer, James, you and I do this show, the healthier we're going to get. Hopefully our listeners too. And then eventually what's going to, because we talked to all these subject matter experts from around the world, eventually what's going to happen is we're going to be like superhuman, and we're going to live to be like 200 years old. And people are going to be like, what's the secret? And we're like, we talked to Steve Frazier back in 2025 and we gave up the rest of our caffeine. Steve, go ahead.
Okay, this is my self-sabotage hat, Jason, okay? And we all self-sabotage, right? We all have the tool shed. You know what the tool shed is, right? You just gave me so many different cognitive dissonant reasons why you should continue to drink those things, okay? And I'm not throwing this in your face. I'm making the observation as one self-sabotage guy to another, okay, is that this is what you're doing. Okay, you are justifying to yourself why you should do this.
Because there's comfort in it.
That's right, absolutely. And let's face it, whether you believe, and if you're drinking this every day, you're not getting a buzz anymore. You're just going to a baseline now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's what caffeine drinkers have no idea what's going on. Okay, let's face it, it's $1 trillion business. I'm against the tsunami, and it's not good for you.
I want to jump in too. I have a question. This was reported to me. I've been in practice for 26 years in private practice. And this has been reported to me more than once. And I'm not sure if I've experienced it, but maybe I have, and I've just forgotten it. Or maybe I want to forget it with my tool shed of self-sabotage. I've had many people say, hey, when I got off caffeine, when I stopped drinking coffee, tea, energy drinks, sodas, all that stuff, my body pain went away. Not just their, headaches and the roller coaster with all of that kind of stuff, but literally I've had people with, I think that would be put into a box of some type of arthritis, some type of arthritis, whether it's a rheumatoid arthritis or an osteoarthritis, but some type of joint, mechanical joint issue, leading to pain and inflammation and pain. I've had numerous people tell me, it's not like I planted a seed. I've had numerous people just say, man, besides the energy, I'm not in pain anymore. Steve, have you noticed this with your clients as well?
Yes. And, there's a number of reasons, but one is that when you are drinking caffeine all the time, you're getting this adrenaline hit all the time, right? Which is stimulating your muscles. Now, it puts glucose in your muscles. You don't use it because you're not in fight or flight. So then your insulin goes up. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, your body's going to rebel. Okay. How does your body rebel? Often inflammation, right? All over. Well, if that's not happening anymore, you're going to reduce the inflammation. Now, I'm not saying that caffeine specifically causes inflammation, but it causes these other things that, as a result, your body is inflamed. Okay. And 30 years ago, I went to a doctor, my MD, and he said, and we agreed that in 10 or 15 years, I would have to have my knee replaced. So my wife gets sick 13 years ago. And so now, I don't know if you really caught this, but she not only became celiac, but grain intolerant as well, and no processed food. So when you're grain intolerant, you don't eat rice, you don't eat corn, you don't eat wheat, you don't eat any of this stuff. Okay. Well,
I'm just curious, does somebody ever get a chance to recover and go back to that?
Rarely, but yes, sometimes some people do. But also, if my wife would go to Italy, she could probably eat the bread on the table and not get sick.
What about sourdough?
No, still too much. And I know what you're talking about. She won't even try it because
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, but it's
like
a good observation.
It's like people that get a prescription drug that the doctor never gets them like a stop date to never take it again. It's like, this is your prescription, just take it for the rest of your life. And I'm just like at that spot, I'm like, well,
what happens?
I can understand that, but does the body actually heal, and do we adapt?
Rarely, but it can, but rarely. So what I would say is that, people that are in that case, her whole experience for the first 5 years was trial and error. And so we would eat something, she'd get sick, we didn't eat it again. I put her in bed for 2.5 days because I fed her a smoked pork chop. Okay. After 2 days, she made me dig in the garbage and look at the label, and it had nitrates in it. Okay. Guess what? If she wants a glass of wine now, they actually make a thing that takes the nitrates out of the wine. And so she can, and it's once or twice a year, but that's beside the point. And I don't know exactly where I was when you asked that question.
Oh, you're just saying that over time, you just know that you don't do those certain things because it just made her sick.
Right. But it was more of the caffeine thing. But anyway.
Sorry to interrupt you there too.
That's okay. I usually keep my train of thought, and I lost that one.
I'll jump in real fast because you opened up, I think in biochemistry. I mean, that's what I do, biochemistry all day long. I read, internal medicine labs, functional internal medicine labs, and my brain is wired to think in those pathways. It's just, it's a blessing, right? It's a blessing and a curse. But it's interesting because you said, hey, with caffeine, and we're stimulating our body to run that glucose into the muscles, right? But we're not in a fight or flight mode. And what happens is the insulin goes up, and I'm going to pause there for a minute. And then you had a little caveat that said, I'm not saying caffeine causes pain or inflammation, but here's the thing with insulin. And this is what really got my brain thinking. Insulin is super inflammatory. Like insulin all by itself is one of the most inflammatory chemicals that we have. In fact, one of the reasons that we see cardiovascular disease so prevalent is because people are consuming copious amounts of sugary drinks and foods, and it causes, and not to mention too many calories and franken foods, and I could go on and on with this. But they end up releasing a lot of insulin, and insulin is inflammatory to all tissues. So now we have pain. I mean, that makes sense, but it's also really inflammatory to our cardiovascular tree. And just like when we've all had some inflammation, like a little, inflammation on our skin. It gets red and dried. It dries out. That happens to our arteries as well, and it kind of cracks a little bit. We call those fissures in the arteries.
Okay.
And then our body is really smart, and it says, "Hey, you've got these fissures in the arteries. We need to patch that so you don't bleed out internally. Let's just put a little sticky triglycerides in there. Let's just put some sticky triglycerides in there, and that'll patch it up. For good old Jason, while he's drinking his caffeine and driving the insulin up and causing cardiovascular problems down in San Antonio. It's just I find it really interesting that there's a direct link between caffeine, the shunting the glucose into the muscles, increasing insulin. So we have that whole thing. And then also cardiovascular disease, which again, we started the whole show out with PVCs and a story of hypertension and tachycardia and a bunch of cardiovascular concerns that aren't maybe not only just side effects from the caffeine, but it really could be side effects from the insulin dump. And then to take it one more step further, and then I'm going to throw a question at you. Insulin, as it goes up, is stressful to the body. Insulin is stressful for the body, and the body goes into a stress response. And when we have that stress response, you mentioned that when we have caffeine, cortisol levels go up, stress chemistry goes up. So it's probably not just due to the caffeine. It's probably another sequelae or a side effect of the increased insulin. And interestingly, I'll finally get there to my question. As cortisol goes up, stress chemistry goes up across the board. We know that as stress chemistry goes up, functional hormones like testosterone go down because it's all from that same cholesterol backbone. And again, cholesterol, anti-inflammatory, trying to mitigate the damages done from the insulin. If we're using it as an anti-inflammatory and then we're taking the rest of it and shunting it into stress chemistry, of course our testosterone is going to go down. Now, here's the question. You mentioned earlier, I have my show notes over here, but somewhere in there you were listing a few things and you said, hey, it even lowers testosterone. I'm curious, your perspective on that. I kind of gave a biochemical dive on that. I hope that made sense for our listeners. Sorry for letting me geek out on everybody. I appreciate it.
It's okay.
But I'd love to hear, you mentioned that very casually. I also have lower testosterone, and I'm just connecting dots back to caffeine right now.
Yep.
Steve, tell me about your experience with caffeine and testosterone. I want to hear all about it.
So this is multifaceted. So anytime, James, you want to ask me a question, just make sure that we remember where I was. Okay.
Okay.
So you can ask anytime. I just don't want to lose my train of thought again. So what happens with the testosterone is cortisol and testosterone are, for lack of a better word, blood feud enemies, right? The more cortisol you have in your body, the less testosterone you're going to have. With the exception of, here's an example, a pre-workout drink. Okay. So, and this is very popular. And I was talking about the guy, Vince Del Monte, that all of a sudden, because he's a major millionaire, his own jet, major influencer. He's got his own pre-workout drink. Okay. So that's where I was. Anyway, look at the guy up. It's a fantastic testimonial on quitting caffeine and how he got his life back. But so he has his own pre-workout drink. So you got all these guys. So my daughter is a natural health practitioner and she goes to the gym and she drinks caffeine. Now she's trying to get off and she's being very challenged. Okay. It's very challenging for her. But I said to her, so all these guys at the gym, they take these copious amounts of caffeine. Now in the pre-workout drinks, there's also things in there that have natural caffeine that are not listed on the ingredient list. Okay. So what they do is they take the pre-workout drink, they go in, they get their PRs, their personal records. And I looked at her and I said, doesn't anybody know that this isn't real? This is natural. Isn't natural. You're just juiced. And she said, nobody cares because you want to look at the guy next to you and say, I just did this. But testosterone actually grows and you actually produce testosterone when you're working out in the morning after you take your pre-workout drink. So that would be the exception to the rule, because then after you come down from that buzz you got from that pre-workout drink, your testosterone drops to almost zero. Okay. And as long as you keep drinking caffeine, then you don't produce testosterone anymore, or very little. And then when you sleep at night, and the 4 stages of sleep, the 3rd stage is where men produce testosterone, women produce estrogen. They'll heal your muscles. Well, that stage is disrupted. Your circadian rhythm is disrupted, and it's delayed and it's shortened, as well as stage 4, which is REM sleep, where you dream and where your subconscious is repairing your brain. Okay, so what's happening then is, and this is the layman version, is when your testosterone goes down, your libido goes down. Now, has it occurred to anybody why the birth rates in almost every country are dropping? Because boys don't want to have sex anymore. Because, and that's not just caffeine. It's also
some
video
boys
games.
do. I just want to go on record. Some boys still do.
All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. Yeah,
Hey,
James, just raise your hand in humor.
I'm not asking a question. I'm not asking a question.
So, but so you're gonna have less babies. Now, what the testosterone, what the caffeine also does is it affects the sperm. The motility, if they don't swim as well. Go ahead.
I know. I had a question that I jotted down while I was creating the notes for today's show, and I was going to ask you what happens to like in utero, like what does it happen when mom is? You're talking about the swimmers.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that in a minute. Okay.
Okay.
Can I finish the guy one?
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And I'm gonna do the girl thing, and the girl thing is fascinating because there's so many more hormones involved. So anyway, for the guy, his sperm is fractured. The DNA is fractured. It doesn't swim as well. Now the woman, before she has the fetus, before she has a baby, there's less blood flow to the uterus where the egg is, and so it has a less opportunity to mate or to hook up with a healthy sperm. Now, remember I talked about generalities. Okay. Here's my message today and every day I talk in podcasts, in speaking, whatever. Do you know somebody? So in this case, do you know someone that is trying to conceive and they're both drinking caffeine? Perhaps it could be the caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
So what would be the harm in stopping the caffeine to try to have a baby? Because if it works, wow, you're having a baby. This is a big deal. Okay. I have 4 kids and 8 grandchildren. I have 2 kids. I have two grandchildren that aren't here because of miscarriages.
Sorry to hear that.
I went to my niece has a stillborn 7-month-old fetus, open casket. Okay. If that doesn't rip your heart out, you don't have a heart. Why do I bring that up? Because caffeine drink by a pregnant woman, and this was my micro mission. Remember, everybody has free will and free won't, except the fetus. The fetus is completely dependent on mom. And Jason, you talked about the liver. Okay, there's an enzyme in the liver. Do you know what it is? CPY1A2. Okay, that processes 95% of the caffeine in our body through the liver. Okay, babies don't develop that enzyme until they're 3 to 6 months old, out of the womb. So if mom's pregnant and drinking caffeine, the baby has no way to get rid of it. It just stays in there. It just stays there.
Wow.
And if she quits while she's pregnant, it stays with the baby for up to 100 hours because it has to clear through the blood because it can't clear through the liver. Now, the reason I bring it up is because I have studies. The 14 middle chapters of my book are cited with over 300 references. Okay. So when I'm talking to you, I'm not making this up. Okay. If you're sharp enough to know when it's my opinion, then you get it. Okay. Most of the stuff I'm telling you is just objective fact. Okay. And the fact is that caffeine can lead to, it's not the only cause or major cause even, can lead to low birth weight, miscarriage, stillbirth, cognitive development, ADD, ADHD. But you realize that the caffeine in the fetus stays in there, and it dramatically affects the adenosine receptors because the adenosine receptors are crucial for the whole development of the fetus.
Wow.
And where's the caffeine going? The caffeine goes into those receptors because the molecule is so similar. And so people say, you can't tell anybody what to do. I know I can't. I have no intention of. But if you know somebody that's pregnant and they're drinking caffeine, and it doesn't matter how much. I don't care what the AMA says. I don't care what anybody says. If you're drinking caffeine every day, the baby cannot clear it because it takes 100 hours for the baby to clear it. I got a little feisty there. My apologies.
No, I think it's important for people to hear because I'm just gonna, if we can just talk about me for a little bit longer. I'm
sure.
teasing.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that CYP1A2 gene, and I actually have a double allele on that polymorphism. What that means, I have a glitch in my code specifically at the CYP1A2, where I am actually a slow metabolizer for caffeine. Now, I didn't know that until just this moment. When you mentioned that, I pulled up my genetics and took a look at it, and I think that's super interesting. And so when you look at that just again, I'll use my self example and then go to the fetus. When you look at that, people with that polymorphism, that genetic glitch, like I have, it raises cortisol, it raises blood pressure, it raises catecholamines or other stress hormones or stress chemicals in our body, and it takes us a lot longer to come down from the effects of that caffeine on those other biological, kind of downstream effects. And what's interesting is, coming back to the fetus, we don't know the genetics of that fetus. I mean, I'm sure they can do some genetic testing with that. I don't think a lot of people are doing genetic testing with fetuses, and I don't know that we need to be poking and prodding developing babies to understand every little intricate detail that we can, but we don't know. And it'd be curious it's curious to think about. It takes, 100 hours or more for them to clear out this caffeine with the effects on their body, which, again, we talked about low birth weight and who knows, neurological development. There's probably a lot of downstream effects there. And that's just if they don't have that slow gene. And think about if they did, like with me, when people would have if that developing fetus has that slow gene, those effects are going to be compounded and compounded and compounded over and over again. It's very curious.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I know that we're well into this episode with Steve. I just want to reel it back a little bit and get into his program. You said it's an 8-week program and there's a protocol around it called Release the Coffee Cuffs. I think that it would be a misstep if we didn't at least talk about your featured program during today's episode.
That's great.
And maybe you can give people the roadmap of what those 8 weeks look like, and then we can continue the conversation of low birth, incidents because of caffeine. No, people aren't having sex anymore because testosterone shot because of caffeine. Like all these different things are happening because the awareness, like if people knew what we know, they would do what we do. And that's what this show does, is it gives people a snapshot of reality that's different than what everybody else is telling them. And it takes away the pleasure that people fill their void with, because it's that cognitive dissonance that you were talking about, Jason. And he's like, oh yeah, just go ahead, bro. Just take your caffeine with your tea now. It's no big deal, because that's what you want. But I want to talk about these pathways that you have on this 8-week program and the protocol around it for releasing the coffee cuffs. And maybe you can just get a little bit more fundamental for the people.
You bet. So the first thing that we talk about is you have to acknowledge that you might have a problem. Okay. The first thing is, if you quit for 12 to 24 hours and you have any of those side effects, you're addicted. Okay. And again, everybody's different. So, James, you quit, you didn't have side effects. Jason, you quit, you had side effects. I had tremendous side effects. So you have a plan. So the first week really is, I don't even encourage anybody to quit the first week, is particular, maybe even the second week. If you make the commitment to quitting, you're going to quit. And I've done 40 podcasts in the last 3.5 months. Okay. And a number of them have been with addiction, a couple drug guys, a couple alcohol guys, because caffeine is an addiction. And it comes and also several other guys talked about this, is that you don't try to quit anything. Trying, you fail 100% of the time. You either quit or you don't quit. You know, I was in the restaurant business for 23 years. I had 1,000, 2,000 employees. They all smoked, drank, not all of them, but most of them smoked, drank, and did drugs. They would come up to me and say, I'm going to try to quit smoking tomorrow. I just want you to be aware because I could be crabby, but I'm going to do this. And I would look at them, I would smile, and I would say, just don't do it. Just spare us all the pain, because if you're only going to try to do it, you are going to fail. And every one of them failed. And in all the conversations I've had, they failed. So first of all, you've got to make a mental, because quitting caffeine is not necessarily physical. There's downsides. Okay. You get the pain, but it's the psychological and emotional and social pressure. You know, 3 months ago, I had breakfast with a good friend of mine. Waitress wakes up, walks up to the table, says, guys, get a cup of coffee. He said, sure, I'll have a cup. I looked at her and I said, I'll have a decaf. He slams his hands down on the table, puts his head across the table and says, decaf? And I said, yeah, caffeine doesn't agree with me. And 5 minutes later, I looked at him and I said, I want you to understand that 8 or 9 of 10 people that you'd have said that to would have had a regular cup of coffee. They would have backed down and not had the decaf. Social pressure. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You talked about this with Jason. It's being part of the herd. The herd drinks caffeine. The herd drinks alcohol. The herd smokes weed, right? When you stop doing those things, you're no longer part of the herd. So you have to have a plan. The plan is crucial. So the first thing you do, and you're going to get this in your show notes, I have 7 different tools and trackers. It's links. It's on a landing page. They can go right to them. And what it does is it helps you figure out how much caffeine you're drinking. And when you figure this out, unless you're going to lie to yourself, well, then you failed already. Okay. But if you really track, I did this with my daughter. She went to New York City 3 weeks ago, went to a seminar for new supplements. So Jason, when you go to these, you usually pair off and you do testing. You know, she got a chiropractor who, by the way, and I don't know his name, but he did the best adjustment she's ever had right there in the seminar room. He tested her and he said, caffeine is your second highest sensitivity. So she comes home and she calls, that's a Sunday, Monday morning, she calls, tells me, I'm going to go down to 150 milligrams. I said, hold on. I said, we got to figure out how much you're doing. Well, what she admitted to was 240 a day. And I think it was 3 to 350. Now, in the grand scheme of things, that's not much, but that is chronic use. So that was 3 or 4 weeks ago. She's now trying to get to 50. She can't do it. She can't get under 100. She can't make herself not get that buzz, get that dopamine hit, get that adrenaline. So you have to have a plan. And then you journal and you journal and you journal again, because this is not about getting off of caffeine. This is about getting personal health freedom. Okay.
Well, they say that 70% of the things that you write down, that will happen.
Yep.
Like as a goal exercise. Like
Yep.
if you actually write things down, and not just put them in your cell phone or make notes on them, but you actually take pen to paper.
Yep.
And here's the other thing is the things that you don't like about yourself and the things that you see to be trouble in your life. If you write those things down, and you go and burn that's a really cathartic thing too.
Yes.
So it's not just recording and keeping. Sometimes we have to go and burn that shit and get rid of it so it doesn't exist in our lives anymore either. So I think you should look at the keeping side of that and the discarding side of that too.
Yes.
And you might want to develop a system where people find out what their deepest, darkest truths are. They don't tell anybody, and write them down and go burn them. And then they can do your method, which is daily journaling to find out what their method is.
I'm just gonna throw this out there, James. You have the best intentions in the world, okay? And nobody's going to do this, okay? 1 out of 100,000 people are going to do this, because, as an example, when you go in our self-sabotage group, and Jason, there's a questionnaire that you send out to new clients. It's 13 to 20 pages, right? And this is single spaced. So when you fill it in, it's 50 to 100 pages long. I mean, it asks you everything about your life. We did a retreat 2 years ago. I had 13 women there. I gave them all the questionnaire. I said, you fill it out, and we had 4 days in Sedona. I said, I will meet with each one of you and we'll go over it. Out of 13 people, one girl did the first 3 pages. Okay, because what happens? And I had a client, $1,000. They gave me $1,000.
You know why?
He didn't want to know what he was doing.
Because you need to create an environment for them that they don't have any distractions except for that one task.
Right.
They have too many choices.
Yeah, and that's generally beyond
when people have pleasure outside of pain, they're going to go for pleasure.
Absolutely.
And the pain is the project and the work.
Yeah, right.
So you're talking about 1 out of a million people. I think it's just the determining factor of how serious is somebody about breaking free from it. And one of my buddies back when he was in chiropractic college, he would tell me that try is the weakest word in the English language.
Yeah.
So I think people should just right now file that and throw it away. Don't use the word try anymore, ever again. If you want to have no results, then try. If you want to have results, then be definitive.
I just want to say, I keep looking over here because above my studio door, I have a metal placard that has Yoda on there, and it says, "Do or do not. There is no try." And it's. I look at it all day, every day as I've been here. The other thing I wanted to mention too, that I think this is a really deep part of the conversation, because going back to, I'm going to try to quit smoking, I'm going to try to quit drinking, I'm going to try to quit using drugs or being addicted to sex or porn or whatever, whatever the addiction of the day is. I think it starts with that commitment of, I'm just not going to do it anymore. Like, I'm not going to try to not do it. I'm just going to not do it. And it's interesting because James brought up, and we know from self-sabotage coaching, James brought up that if there's pleasure, people will naturally gravitate to the easier thing to do. And the easiest thing to do is to just keep doing what you're doing. I had a client that I just met with. I'm just working with her. And I hope that I get to keep working with her. I have my doubts for this reason. This is their second round of attempting to work with us. She dropped out, ghosted us for almost 2 years. Paid us. We tried everything we could to get her going, but just dropped out. Came back on and said this is the time in her life. Her relationship had changed. In that 2-year period, her symptoms have gotten worse. She was on a record number of 27 drugs. And I don't mean like over the counter stuff. I mean 27 different prescription drugs, which is mind boggling to me that there's physicians out there and pharmacists out there that would fill 27 different medications. I mean, it's something's clearly wrong. Her main complaint though is blood sugar swings and, type 2 diabetes. She's non-insulin dependent and was on metformin, glucophage, and anyway, it doesn't matter. And I said to her the same thing that I've said to a lot of people that are type 2 diabetic, where I said, hey, the reality is if you don't want to be diabetic anymore, type 2 diabetes, anyway, non-insulin dependent, I'm trying to be very clear here about setting expectations. If you change your diet the way that I'll throw to you to change your diet, you won't be diabetic anymore and you won't need those drugs in a very short amount of time. I've seen it as short as 2 days. I've seen it literally in 48 hours. People's blood sugar drops so low when they're on those drugs that they don't need the drugs anymore. I've certainly seen people over a 3 to 6 month period. Like everybody that commits to that is going to get off their diabetes meds. And I say that very boldly. I have countless cases that we can refer to with those stats. And anyway, we got her onboarded. She's working with her coach. The coach she's working with has a master's degree and she's an MS in nutrition, and also she's a registered dietitian. Been working with her for 7 or 8 years, but I assigned her to this nutrition coach, and she ghosted us again, and literally just ghosted. And we've been trying to follow up. We've had a couple of appointments scheduled this week where we can just hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? But I already know what's going on. What's going on is it's a whole lot easier to just stay on those drugs, to just keep eating the way that you're eating, to keep having the self-sabotage, destructive, influence that your self-influence. Plus, as we mentioned, the tribe. I mean, who doesn't want to eat, Little Debbie's all day and drink the sugary drinks and, the fried foods and be around other people doing it and drinking the caffeine and, all of this stuff. And ultimately, I think in my screening process now, I'm very particular with who we work with. I've been doing my job long enough to know we can help anyone probably through just about anything. But it starts here with the client. And sometimes I realize lately, and this is a reminder for me, sometimes I believe in the case more than the patient. Sometimes I can see it. I can see the outcome. I can see if you just do XYZ, like literally, I've done this countless times, hundreds, thousands of times. If you just do this, I can predict where you'll be in 30 days, 90 days, 120, wherever it is. And if you don't do it, I can predict where you'll be as well. I love that we're bringing up this commitment part, because without that commitment, addicts are going to fail. I mean, they're just going to fail. Whether again, it's the caffeine addiction, sex addiction, food addiction, work addiction. I mean, whatever it is that's giving us that dopamine hit, feel good, complacency in that pleasure. Because as James said, it takes work. I mean, to fill out your form. I mean, Steve, as you mentioned, I mean, one person filled out 3 pages of the form. I mean, if the solutions are there for people, it's just they have to be committed to wanting a solution. That was just a diatribe. I'm sorry about, going off on that, but it just reminded me. James, go ahead. Take over, please. I'm just rambling.
Yeah. I just want to jump in. And I was on an airplane on a flight last night coming from South Carolina over to Denver. And it was a 3.5 hour flight. And this lady was next to me and she was asking me about life. And I told her, coming up on 7 years of sobriety on Thanksgiving from alcohol, and I don't drink coffee. I don't smoke weed. I was like, there's a lot of shit that I don't do. And she goes, what planet are you from? And I go, that's just it. I created a lifestyle that's otherworldly. Like I told her, I just went 11 days without food. All I drank was salt and water. And she's like, what planet are you from? And that's just it, is to be extraordinary in this lifetime. You just have to quit doing all of the normal stuff that most people get trapped into. And then you have to take a personal inventory of yourself and say, what is credible for me? What do I like? What serves me? And really the big thing for me, Steve, is I just wanted to go back and find out what I was really like without all these things.
Mm.
And I think that's who I like, just being James. And that's the big thing for your patients, Jason, and the people you help, Steve, is eventually they're going to have to go back to square one and like who the fuck they really are. Like they're going to really have to like themselves. And when you stop doing all these other stimulants, you have to be okay with you. And that's been my godsend, to be that beacon of light for other people, to be like, oh, geez, this guy's from another planet. No, I'm from the same planet. I said, this is the thing that makes us all the same. Do you want to hear it? I said, we all get the same amount of time every day, and gravity's on for all of us. As like, you can determine what you want to do on your day-to-day basis and spend your time doing, and you can build your behaviors around that. If you wanted to stop eating food for 2 weeks and just drink salt and water, you can do that. If you wanted to go to church every Sunday, regardless if you were traveling or what was in your life, you could do that. I was like, whatever you determine is the most important thing in your life, you're going to do that. And I go, if that's drinking sugary soda and eating Little Debbie's or whatever it is, you're going to do that. But I wanted to go full circle on this because I know we have about 22 minutes left of today's show, but there's something that Jason talked about of this patient ghosting. There's something that you talked about of people not conceiving and having a healthy lifestyle. What's the connection between caffeine use and the mental health crisis that we're seeing? Because I think there's a lot of people that are definitely IQ deficient. And there's also the guilt, shame, and anxiety and fear that comes into that. But I think a lot of it's coming from what we're consuming. I told the lady also, I haven't had TV in 14 years. Like, when we remove the things that don't serve us, we can start filling in the gaps with things that are better for us. So how is caffeine use affecting the mental health crisis that we're seeing across the board now?
Well, it goes down to one thing, and that's sleep. That's going to be your base, because if you get a great night's sleep and your stage 3 and your stage 4 are normal, and you get that quality healing and you get that quality dreaming and REM sleep, what you're going to do is you're going to wake up and you're going to feel great. Okay. You're going to feel like, I wake up, I look at the sun, or now I use a sun lamp to help my cortisol go up. Okay. I'm very productive in the morning. Okay. And so you look at mental health. Now, the average American, the first thing they do in the morning is drink a cup of coffee before they do anything else. Now, I also drink lemon water to hydrate. Okay. And if you're listening to this and you're not going to quit caffeine, I would ask you to do one thing: is drink 20 ounces of lemon water when you wake up in the morning. An hour later, have a cup of coffee. Because what you did is you gave your cortisol a chance to go up naturally, and you also hydrated your cells. Okay. But when it goes back to the mental health thing, as you're being stimulated regularly throughout the day, your hormones, and in particular women, okay, because they're very more hormonal than men, their anxiety and nervousness level is going to go up. Now, you and I, the three of us, are not supposed to talk about our emotions because we're men, right? And so how many men, now I'm being facetious, I hope you understand that,
Sure.
because it's the best thing to do is to talk. If you're feeling bad, you should talk about it, right? But men don't, and women do, maybe to just each other, but men don't even, men don't go to their buddies and sit and have a beer and say, man, I'm really bummed out. They're nervous. They're anxious. They've got all this cortisol going through their system. They got all this adrenaline. Okay. College students, here's a study that I cited in my book. They took college students that were testing, and they took a group that was on caffeine and a group that was not on caffeine. The non-caffeinated group scored better in their test results, because the common thing is that when we have caffeine, we think clearer, we're sharper. Okay, we're not. We're a baseline. But then what happens is that when you start to come down off of that big hit, dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline, you're crap. And so now when you were studying, what you thought was studying really good, now you're not studying at all, and you're not retaining anything. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, it opens up more gateways for me, and this is for Dr. Jason. So Steve's saying get off of everything and don't quit immediately, but eventually get yourself to a point you're not dependent upon it. He's talking about sleep patterns are the one energizer that's going to get people to go baseline and actually better. If they pay attention to that one marker, their sleep, they don't need caffeine anymore. I mean, caffeine is really a myth. It's something that we've supplemented with, and it's in everything. It's in everything, as almost as much as high fructose corn syrup is in everything. But when we think about, you were talking about low testosterone, what would you recommend to people that are listening to us for them to reboot their testosterone after they become less dependent upon caffeine for their energy and they realize that their libidos are low?
Sleep.
I think it's a great
sleep.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, man.
Sleep
Yeah,
better.
sleep.
It's the key.
Yeah.
It's the key to all of this, because that's where you heal.
Water and sleep and circadian rhythm.
Yep. There you go.
That's the answers.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, ultimately, in 2023, I was blessed to have an internationally best-selling book, The Epic 5 Plan, which I will just say is available on Amazon Kindle Unlimited for free if you want to download that, if you have that subscription. But I boil it down to 5 things. That's why it's called the Epic 5 Plan, which is hydration, diet, which is just eat real food, movement, nervous system regulation, and sleep management, or sleep cycles. If I had to do one more, I'd say community. And I wanted to step back to what Steve said about men not talking about their emotions and all this stuff. I think there's a lot of stigma there, but I'm fascinated by this statistic, and it depends on who you ask and what you're looking at. But somewhere between 40 and 50, a little over 50%, 40 to about 52% of men don't even have one man that they can talk to. I mean, in some deep and meaningful way. I mean,
without beers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really interesting, because I think that, as we're talking about this, and I mean, James was talking about when we start stripping it all away, as we strip back our diet away from, fake food, and we get our drinks, off the caffeine, which now I feel guilty drinking my matcha latte as we're finishing this show, but I got to drink something right now. I already texted Rachel, and I'm like, I'm going off caffeine. and she said, you gotta listen to Steve, you gotta wean off
Yeah.
of it. And I'm like, I'm going cold turkey. I'm setting 5-3.
Yeah.
I'm jumping off the cliff. But back to that, it's I think as we start stripping it down and we're not drinking anymore, I used to drink, I drank probably enough for everybody on the call right now and everybody listening. Not recently, but relatively recently in my life, I had THC in my body every day of my life since I was 16 years old, with the idea that it was regulating my anxiety, and my caffeine was regulating my energy, and my drinking took the edge off, and my shitty food I was eating, just made me feel good because it was comfort food. And I mean, it's hilarious that I was counseling people on how to be healthy, and in the background I was doing all this just crap decisions, just absolute crap decisions. But as we strip those away, our inner circle gets smaller and smaller. There's a lot of drinking buddies, or sharing a joint, buddies, or let's go get a coffee buddies, or whatever. I mean, whatever happens. But as we strip it back, we are left with the man in the mirror, or the person in the mirror. And sometimes that's a hard person to look at. I mean, we aren't given as men the same opportunities to communicate, to discuss, to develop, to find that peace within ourselves. And I just find it very interesting that as we're stripping all of this back, yeah, we're getting healthier if we make that decision. But I think that there's a whole aspect here, Steve. You said you got to be prepared. Like, I mean, there's a lot more to this than just, I'm going to quit drinking caffeine.
Well,
there's a whole social.
That's why it's 8 weeks. Okay. That's why it's,
yeah.
It's, and I'll touch it just a second, James, and I'll finish up on my program. But, you got to be prepared. Then you got to choose how you're going to quit. And then you've got to decide what you're going to do. Okay. What are you going to do in every social instance now where you're drinking caffeine? Okay. Like me with my buddy with drinking caffeine at breakfast. Okay. How am I going to deal with that when somebody going to address that? And again, you're going to lose some friends because you're not part of the herd, and you got to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. And that's real. I'm not making this up, because it's in everything. Every time you leave the herd, you're going to lose people from that herd. That's where you find out who your true friends are. And what you're going to find out is you may only have literally a handful of friends that are good friends, because they're not attacking you because you're leaving the herd. And then what happens is you have to personally find choices, alternatives to that habit. Okay. And we do a lot of breath work. We do a lot of journaling, a lot of brief, instead of lunch, coffee break, having a 15-minute coffee break, take a 10-minute walk. Go up and down the stairs, take a walk, get fresh air, get some vitamin D. You're going to feel better. All these things are coffee's making you feel worse, temporarily buzz, or literally just a baseline. But then what you do is, and then you celebrate every win. Every time you go a day without caffeine, you have a party for yourself. And with maybe with your partner, with your wife, your husband, your kids, your whoever, right? This is a big deal, because I did a podcast with my daughter, and we were talking. Right.
I drink coffee there.
I did that, and vape. Okay, but that's beside the point. And I want one philosophical question before, and then you can go ahead, Jason. Is that how many people are listening to this, including yourselves, know what it's really like to feel healthy? I mean, true health. I have a pretty good idea. I'm 68. I'm on no meds. My weight is, I'm a little overweight, but I'm basically good. But my numbers are all good. Okay, my knees are great now compared to they were 30 years. I wake up in the morning, I have energy. I go to sleep at night at 10 o'clock naturally.
Yeah.
What can I say?
I think that it's an open question for any audience.
Yes.
And I think that it's very wise. I'm going to pass to Jason for a hot moment, but you said that you have this book called Epic 5 Plan, people can download it for free on their Kindle, and where else can they get it?
I just said go to Amazon. If you just look up Epic 5 Plan and you have a Kindle Unlimited, you got to have that Kindle Unlimited subscription. I don't know how much that is, $11 a month or something like that. But
I know that you're working on another book called Carnivore Consciousness, but I'm going to plant another seed. Epic Epic 5 Plan for kids. Clean up the diets in the children, because they're the future, man. And you know, I was just working for 12 straight days, like 10-hour days, and there was a gal there that was giving her kid coffee, and probably like 9 years old, drinking off of her coffee drink, and she's like, "Yeah, I just let her have coffee whenever she wants it now." And it made me think about what you're talking about, Steve, and Jason's, buy-in for downloading his book, his Ethical Bribe. Go get the book. But I'm like, well, what if we did it for like cleaning up the house and the kids, and the Epic 5 Plan for cleaning up your children's life? And I think that there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it that people would definitely, they need a playbook, and sometimes you have to tell them what to do, not how to do it. And I believe that, Jason, you have the credibility in the world, especially as Get Better Faster starts to be released and go big time. People are
syndicated in 7 days, guys. I'm so stoked. By the time the show comes out, we'll be everywhere. I'm so stoked about it.
Yeah, and I think that that's just a big thing I wanted to anchor in on, because I know we're coming up to the edge of our times together, but I think there's so much to it with your expertise and the guests that we bring on, and just having these organic conversations. And like Steve said, most guys don't have like a think tank that they can talk about their feelings and the crud that they need help with. And I think that there's resources here. There's resources on the Get Better Faster podcast, and it starts with Dr. Jason Bradley, but it goes to our subject matter experts like Steve Frazier with Release the Coffee Cups. There's just so much goodness that we're creating over here. And I have more questions, but I'll let you jump in, Jason. I know you're ready.
I have a comment and then a question I can't believe about the 9-year-old drinking coffee or given. I mean, I get it. I can't believe it, but I can believe it. And it sounds absurd, but at the same time, we let them drink sodas. You know, I mean, we're like, go ahead and drink that Coca-Cola, or whatever, whatever the flavor of the day is again. And I mean, that's going to have caffeine in it. So I understand it's a different concept, but I mean, there's a priming there that I think you're hitting on, James. A priming of the pump for those kids to get used to fitting in, now with mom, with dad, with culture, etc. So thank you for bringing that up. And it's absurd, but I get it. Steve, my question is, one of the challenges that I face, especially with dietary modification with our clients, is spouses, partners, people living in the house. And I'm wondering, with your clients that you've helped thousands of people, get off the coffee cups, which I love the name of your book, by the way. But it's so brilliant. But you've helped so many people off this. Tell me about, it's not just self-sabotage. People would want to, if we were out, which has become more and more rare these days. But we'd be out somewhere and people are like, let me buy you a drink. And I'm like, I don't need a drink. I'm not drinking. Like, no, come on, whatever you want. They're like almost encouraging, like, I want to buy you a drink. Come on, fit in. You got to fit in. And I see that it's not just self-sabotage, but it's the people around you. It's almost like when there's lobsters in a tank and they're trying to get out and they're just pulling each other down.
You're not call it crabs in a bucket.
Yeah.
Crabs in a bucket. There we go. Maybe it's crabs and not lobster. But Steve, I wonder, when you're helping people, kick the caffeine habit, tell me about spouses. Tell me about like that's got to be a challenge for people. I mean, is it easier for the couple to do it, or do you just? I don't know.
It is. If you don't have the support of your spouse or your partner, it's going to be a much bigger challenge. And it's just like everything else. It's like alcohol. It's like smoking. I don't have the golden nut, because I've beat this to death in my head. I beat it to death in calls, and that is, it comes down to this: you know, when Brenda was sick, we found something, and to us, this was a big deal. You may already know this. That's okay. Some of your listeners may know. There's nobody that cares about you other than yourself. There's no, if you go to the doctor and you think the doctor's there to help you, you're in big trouble. Okay, because you are the only. When you put that in a perspective, and you took and so I'll go right to the caffeine. Okay, when your spouse, whether it's a man or woman, sees you improve dramatically when you quit caffeine, they're either an idiot if they don't quit, or they don't really love you. Because if they respect you and love you, and they see the dramatic improvement in your life, and it's going to be dramatic. If you're a chronic user and you quit caffeine, physiologically, that didn't come out right, but mentally, you know, socially, you're going to be a better person. It's because you're going to think better. You're going to think clearer. You're not going to wake up crabby. You're not going to wake up. And that you touched on something, Jason, and I want to hit this 9-year-old. First of all, I did a podcast with a Colombian girl a couple months ago. When she was born in Colombia, her baby bottle had half caffeine, half coffee, and half milk. That's how she was raised. Okay. But if you go back to the Hills Brothers commercial, those two little boys are the first thing they see is mom. She's got her cup, and a lot of those cups, you know what they say? Don't talk to me before I drink this. From birth to 7 is where we create our subconscious mind. If you listen to Bruce Lipton, you know, and you get this, it's a theta brainwave state. You can reprogram that. Now, as adults, we only have it twice a day, generally. We have it sometimes while we sleep, but it's when you wake up and when you go to bed, just for a couple minutes. If you go to bed tonight, and the last thing you think of is gratitude, what are you going to think about in your subconscious? You're going to think about gratitude. Okay. You think about killing somebody, or you think about all the bad things that happened. That's what you're going to think about. Okay. So how we are programmed, and our system of happiness, it's the key to not just happiness, but adulting and parenting. Because everything those kids are watching mom and dad do, they are filing. And we run, our lives run 95 to 98% on our subconscious.
The worst part there, Steve, is it's not the adults, or it's not the kids, it's the adults that are mimicking each other too.
Yes.
And like I was always once told, it's not my monkey, not my circus. And, you know, we do have to set good examples. That's why at 47, I'm probably the most straight edge human walking this earth, maybe next to Jason Christoff, just because I just removed all the distractions and all of the things that made me soft and average. I just said, you know, I'm done with all of this stuff. But I wanted to go back to your program because I know that we're going to tie this up soon. You have a comprehensive support system, including trackers, meditations, and community resources. Walk people through that in brevity and let them know what that looks like.
Okay, so we have a community forum, which is open 24/7. And we check that from usually about 14 to 16 hours a day. So, I mean, I don't get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we respond to that. We have a Q&A section, and we have a group coaching call every week, and that's archived. And then we also have personal one-on-one coaching calls. And that is literally to give you the support that you're looking for, because you can't do it yourself, you know, and whether and it can be a man or woman, it doesn't matter. Okay. But when you can talk to somebody, I have been a chronic caffeine user. I get it. I understand. Okay. I'm not a virgin here. Okay. I mean, I was one of the biggest culprits. And so, and then you also have you got the one-on-ones, and then every week you have videos, and you've got more tools, you've got more ways to journal and more ways to track yourself, because it always comes back to the, you know, and one of the things I really stress is, I don't know if you're familiar with that, you know, you mentioned it briefly, Jason, but you know, the best thing to do is to do your affirmations in the mirror eye to eye with
Mm.
yourself. Okay. Who are you talking to? The only person that's controlling your life is you. Okay. Anybody that tells you, the three of us, that somebody else is controlling their life is lying. I mean, even you go back to the concentration camps and you in World War II in Germany, and they never bought in, and they had the intention of life.
I'm gonna tell you this: with you and God, you can
Yep.
do anything.
I agree.
And
Amen.
it's nice that you have a good support group, but all you need is God and yourself, and you can make any decision.
I'm going to throw in something here quickly because you brought that up. Okay. I'm writing another book. It is called Christian Brave. And it really is inspired by Charlie Kirk. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying it's about him because it's not. Okay. But I watched him a lot, commandments. And when you talk about this and you look at God, and so I got compelled by the Holy Spirit to write this. My wife's going to do a whole merch line, and it's about speaking out and not being afraid, because we're all afraid, you know. So how many people are willing to talk about the things that the three of us are talking about now? I mean,
I'll just tell you, Steve, I appreciate that. Most people are afraid. We're not all afraid.
yes, no,
And
correct.
and most are afraid, but some people are not, and that's why they need good leadership. You know, I was talking to a lady next to me. I go, the reason that so many people are confused and they're weak-souled is because they don't have good leadership. And the people that we used to believe in, like athletes, that would set a standard, the Olympians that would set a standard, now they beat their girlfriends up and they gamble and they get arrested.
Yep.
Like, they don't set a standard anymore. So we have to find new leaders, and that's us. We have to be that person that stands in the gap and says, not on my watch. We're going to create resources, and that's why Get Better Faster exists. Because we're giving people the tools and the resources so they can get better faster, just like what you're talking about. You have a method, you have a mission, you have a purpose, and I believe in you, and I think it's going to help people get better faster. I do want to give 2 more moments for Jason to close out with any ideas or closure moments, and I do also want to ask you, is there anything we didn't ask you that you would like to share with our audience today?
I want to emphasize the pregnant woman thing. Okay. I can't, you know, my mission, I can't make anybody quit caffeine. I have no desire to make anybody quit. But if you know someone that has any of these issues that we talked about, and there's a lot more that we didn't talk about. I mean, we could do a 5 or 10 hour podcast, right? We're not going to do that. If you know someone, pass some of this information on. You know, there's going to be a lot of information in the show notes, and there's a lot of information on my website. And so I can end with 2 things. One is that this is my wife. She's got these Brendaisms, I call them. And that is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Now, you've all heard this, right? However, you can make it thirsty. My role is to make people thirsty for information, especially if they're sick, because you do realize that doctors have cognitive dissonance just like everybody else. If they're drinking 5 to 10 cups of coffee a day, there's no way they're going to look at a patient and say, well, caffeine is causing that because I don't have that, right? They're just going to roll right over it, okay? And then the other thing is, and I've mentioned this several times, is that you may know someone. Perhaps that someone is you.
It's the man in the mirror.
Yep.
Wow. Those were powerful words.
I can't say more than that. I mean, you know what I mean? So I'm just going to leave it at that.
And Jason, the mic's yours.
All right, man. No, Steve, and James, I just really appreciated this call today. And, you know, the longer we do this show, and I mean, we're dozens of episodes in now, the more I realize that the solutions that we're all looking for, I mean, health can be complex, and it is. I mean, there's a lot of different factors. There's environmental factors, community factors, you know, genetics and chemistry and all of that stuff. But ultimately, sometimes it's just really simple decisions. You know, and I would say, in fact, most of the time it's simple decisions. And it's that commitment to as James said, I want an extraordinary life. I don't want to phone it in. I don't want to have a loveless relationship. I don't want to be on the emotional energy, roller coaster anymore. I want to get off the treadmill of birth, school, work, death. There's so much more that's out there. And, I just want to say, Steve, that this conversation today has motivated me. I didn't even realize I was being resistant to getting off caffeine again. I've been off it before, but I didn't realize that I was resistant to it until we got into the front end of this show. And like I said, by mid-show, I'd already texted our beautiful, wonderful, intelligent, kind executive producer Rachel Bradley, who I happen to share my life with. And I told her I'm off, and like I said, she's like, let's wean off. And I'm like, nope, I'm jumping off that cliff. I'll set aside, there she said very powerful, by the way, in the comments, but I just want to say thank you for your time today. I needed this challenge today. I really did. And I can't wait to get your show, out to the masses and on all the efforts produced and everything, and get the show notes up and the resources to everybody, because I think the resources that we're sharing, the resources that we're sharing are going to be powerful to our listeners and to the public. So thank you again for your time today. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. I looked forward to this. I can't wait till it comes out. You guys are doing fantastic work. We all have to do our thing, our own little contribution, right? And if we do that, we're going to make the world a better place.
That's right.
And I'll leave you with this, with the baby thing. You and I, the three of us and your listeners, have the opportunity to possibly save a life. And just think of that. I mean, I'm serious. When you're done, sit in a corner and think about it. How many people get to save a life? Very, very few. Couple doctors in the ER, right? And if we stop one woman, if we can encourage one woman to stop drinking caffeine while she's pregnant and she has a healthy child, we'll never know. No delayed gratification, so we'll never know. But I know in my heart that if we spread this to thousands of people or tens of thousands, that somebody's going to quit. And because of that, a baby was born healthy. And I accomplished my mission.
Yeah. I just got chills. That's so awesome.
Well, I'm a proponent and a supporter of chiropractic. And if anybody watches this show, Dr. Jason's been a chiropractor for 26 years. And I tell people all the time, if I don't tell you the truth about chiropractic today, somebody else will close you for drugs or surgery. And
That's right.
I think it's very fitting at the outro of the show. And Steve, I just want to say this episode's been eye-opening and transformative. I'm sure the listeners out there that are going to hear this are going to be reaching out to you. For our listeners that are tired of riding the caffeine roller coaster, the jitters, the crashes, the sleep disruption, the anxiety that feels normal but isn't, Steve has created a proven pathway out of all of this. His 8-week coaching program that I was urging him to talk about will walk you through the science, the psychology, and the practical strategies to reclaim sustainable energy and mental clarity without relying on stimulants or drugs. And his book, Release the Coffee Cuffs, Winning the Battle with Caffeine, is packed with humor, science, and real-world guidance. This isn't about willpower. It's about understanding how caffeine has rewired your nervous system and learning how to heal your nervous system. Remember, nobody is coming to save you, but solutions like this can prove you can save yourself. Steve, thank you again for sharing your journey and your wisdom, your wife's story, all the things that you shared with us today. And to all of our GBF Nation, thank you for listening and your continued support. Do you know the best way to show your support? Share this episode with somebody who needs to hear this message, especially that friend. Maybe it's the man in the mirror that says, don't talk to me before I had my coffee. And don't forget to subscribe to our amazing podcast, Get Better Faster, so you never miss another episode and get all the behind the scenes tomfoolery, I guess we could say, but a lot of truth that we've got coming your way. We've got more incredible guests lined up who are going to blow your mind with real solutions for reclaiming your health, your happiness, and your life. Until next time, keep questioning everything and keep getting better faster. And let's go save some lives. Love and appreciate you guys. Thanks for being with us today.
Love you guys too.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, Jason.